The Smeds and the Smoos. By a lobular lake on a far-off planet, there lived a young Smed, and her name was Janet. Not far away on a humpelty hill, there lived a young Smoo by the name of Bill. Janet, like all the Smeds, was red, and this is what her grandfather said. Never, never play with the Smoos. They sleep in holes, they wear strange shoes, they jump about like kangaroos. Never, never play with the Smoos. Bill, like all the other Smoos, was blue, and these were the words of Grandmother Smoo. Never, never play with the Smeds. They have strange hairs upon their heads. They sleep in funny things called beds. Never, never play with the Smeds. The Smeds on their lake liked nothing better than splashing about, getting wetter and wetter. But Janet grew bored with this watery play, and early one morning she tiptoed away. The Smoos jumped about on their humpelty hill. They bounced up and down, and it never stood still. But Bill was beginning to think this is boring, so early one morning he set off exploring. Janet met Bill in the Werpular wood, where the trockles grew tall and the glompom smelled good. The two rubbed antennae and played all day long. She told him a story, he sang her a song. They climbed to the top of a gerberry coot and nibbled its juicy and jellyful fruit, till who should disturb them but Grandfather Smed. Shaking his fist, he angrily said, Never, never play with a Smoo. They're such a nasty shade of blue. For the 100th time I say to you, never, never play with a Smoo. Grandmother Smoo was close behind, and this is how she spoke her mind. Never, never play with a Smed. They're such a dreadful shade of red. I'll say again what I've always said. Never, never play with a Smed. Years went by on the far-off planet. Janet missed Bill, and Bill missed Janet. But off they crept whenever they could to sing and play in the Werpular wood. The two of them grew and decided to wed, but what do you think their grandparents said? Never, never marry a Smoo. They're a beastly bunch, they're a ghastly crew. They drink black tea and they eat green stew. Never, never marry a Smoo. Never, never marry a Smed, my dearest child. Are you off your head? They drink pink milk, they eat brown bread. Never, never marry a Smed. Janet and Bill stole out that night, while their families slept and the scroon shone bright. They clambered into the Smed's red rocket. Grandfather Smed had forgotten to lock it. Bill pressed the button and Janet steered. When their families woke, they had both disappeared. The Smed said, Your Bill must have stolen our Janet and taken her off to a far-off planet. The Smoo said, It's Janet who's stolen our Bill, and lured him away from the Looplia hill. The Smoos climbed into their rocket of blue, and they said to the Smeds, You'd better come too. Suspicious and scowling, they soared into space till they reached planet Vumjum, a dry, dusty place. The Vums had long arms which they waved in the air, but they didn't have news of the runaway pair. The next stop was Lurglestrop, covered in roses, and watered by beasts with small eyes and long noses. They touched down on Grimbletosh, coated in grime. They searched Planet Glurch and found nothing but slime. One morning the Smoos found they'd run out of tea, so the Smed shed their milk, which was pink as could be. Then Grandfather Smed said, My hair needs a trim, and Grandmother Smoo kindly cut it for him. They landed on Sklop, where the Sklopoppies wore kilts. Then they flew to Clubob, where the clubs walked on stilts. They searched all year long, then they searched longer still, but they didn't find Janet, they didn't find Bill. Alas, said the Smoos, and the Smeds said, Alack, we have failed in our quest, we had better turn back. So they turned and flew home to their very own planet, and far down below them they saw Bill and Janet. The rocket touched down, and they ran to the wood where the trockles grew tall and the glompom smelled good. And there in a glade by the rocket of red were the runaway Smoo and the runaway Smed. They'd got lost and flown home again, only to find that all of the others had left them behind. There was joy, jam and jumping. Then Janet said, Maybe you'd like to make friends with our dear little baby. A baby, a red one, a blue one, but no! Their baby was purple from head to toe. They all hugged the Smoo Smed, their new baby brother, and Grandpa and Gran even hugged one another. They laughed and they splashed and they danced with delight, and they played with that baby from morning till night. They made him a rattle, they made him a flute, they fed him the fruit of the gerberry coot. Then they sang by the light of the silvery scroon, and you can sing too if you make up a tune. Play with the Smeds and play with the Smoos, play with whichever friends you choose. Then close your eyes and while you snooze, dream of Smeds and dream of Smoos.
Hi, so today we are going to have a think about planning our own story. So we don't need to be able to write reams and reams and reams for today, but we do need something to write with and something to write on, because we are going to have a go at planning a story. Now, I actually really enjoy the process of planning a story. I think it's quite good fun, and sometimes I will come across a story that I think is great and I should definitely write, and sometimes I just think, well, I didn't think that through very well. And so it's not necessarily a story that I would choose to write, but I do think that sitting down and having a proper plan certainly makes it a lot easier. I know as a child, when we were asked to write stories in school, I would smash the character description at the beginning and I'd never get into the rest of the story because I found it really difficult to sort of keep that momentum and that flow, and so my stories never really went anywhere. So learning to plan a story is actually really quite useful. So you will need something to write with and something to write on. If you don't have them, then pause, go grab them and come back. And you may well want to draw today. Sometimes it's easier to draw than it is to write. So if you need a bit more space for that, then just bear that in mind. I would always choose to write on my plans, but that's because your plan is for you. That's it. Your plan is for you to enable you to write the best story that you can. So the only person that has to understand your plan is you. And as long as you can, it doesn't matter whether it is words, whether it is drawings, whether it's notes, whether it's full sentences. It'll take you a lot longer if you do it in full sentences, but it really doesn't matter. And you don't have to be the world's best illustrator in order to plan a brilliant story, as long as you can recognise what your pictures are of so that you can really get into it. I am far from an artist. It is not one of the things that I am very skilled at. And so for me, I would always choose to make notes just because I find it easier. And when I come back to it, it's easier for me to see where my mind was at the time and what I intended to actually put into it. So today we are going to use the idea of a story mountain, sort of a journey to create our story. So if we consider, you don't need to draw this just yet, but if we consider a mountain, our story will start here and it will build, and then it will slowly come to an end. So I could use a story that I know really, really well. In actual fact, I'm going to use The Smeds and the Smoos because I read it recently, so it is a story that I'm sort of familiar with. If you haven't listened to it, then go and watch the video of it because it's a great story. So I'm going to use that as my story point. You could do it using that. You could come along with me for the journey, or you could completely write your own. That's the whole point of this, is that you would be able to completely write your own. But so what we have is at the beginning, we have the character description and the setting. So at the beginning of our story, we find out who is in our story and where our story happens. Then as we go up the hill, we have our build up. And then at the very top, in a really simple format, we have a problem. And then as we come down the other side of the hill, we will have a solution. And then I always like to put in an ending because I think it's always nice for the ending to happen after the solution rather than for the solution to be the end. So our story mountain so far looks a bit like this. We've got the idea that we need character description and setting, then we need to build up the story, then we need the problem, then the solution, and then some sort of ending. Now, the more detail you put into your plan, the more beneficial it will be when you come to write your story. The less work you will have to do when you come to write your story because you will already have loads of ideas. You will have thought about how your build-up links into your problem and how your solution solves your problem. You will have thought about those characters and what they're like. You will have gone through and added in adjectives or adverbs or conjunctions that you really want to use in each part of the story. And therefore, you don't have to do quite as much thought when it comes to actually writing your story. So if I think about the characters that are in the story of the Smeds and the Smoos, there are two families, the Smeds and the Smoos, and in particular, Janet and Bill. So in the space that's there, you could draw Janet and Bill, or you could write Janet and Bill, Smeds, Smoos. So I am going to write Janet and Bill, and I'm going to write Smeds and Smoos because I know those to be important things. And then I'm also going to consider the things that I know about them. So in this case, the Smeds are the red ones, so I can use the book to refer back to it and help me. But the Smeds are the red ones, and they sleep in beds, and they've got hair on their heads, and they like to play in the lake. So anything that I know about the character, now in this case, obviously I'm using a story that already exists, so I can use the book to go back. But if you're doing your own story, then you can put in whatever detail you want. And all we do is, in the space that is around that, we write everything that we can about those characters and also about the settings. Now, the difficulty for me on the piece of paper that I have, I think this is quite an important thing to talk about, is that obviously my writing is quite big, and the board that I'm writing on, although it is quite big, it's obviously not quite big enough. So although what I'm aiming for is that arc of a story, I might have to break this down and do the character description and setting on one piece of paper, and then the build up somewhere else, and the problem somewhere else, and the solution somewhere else, and the ending somewhere else. And I might not need as much space for all of them as I do, for some of them. The character and setting description will take up quite a lot of room because I have a lot to say about my characters, but then the build up and the solution might not take me that much to be able to do. So I might be able to fit the build-up and the problem on one page, and then the solution and the ending on another. If you're doing it in picture form, you might well be able to do it all on one page. And the other thing that I do, which I do find really useful, is I'll have like a range of colours. So when I was doing the original story mountain, I did that in blue, but then I put the blue pen away, and I'm not going to use that again because then I know that just tells me what those sections need to be, and it shows me the hump of the story mountain. And then I started to write the character description and the settings in red, and I might choose to do a different colour for each section. Or what I tend to do is I choose one colour that I write all the main information down, and then I'll use another colour for adjectives that I intend to use within that bit, and then maybe a different colour for like grammatical features that I want to try and include. So maybe specific conjunctions, or I might really want to try and get a question or an exclamation into a certain part of the story because I think it fits really well. And so I just make a note of that to remind myself that that was what I wanted to do. And using different colours is certainly a really good way of keeping that really clear to you, because although it might be clear to you when you're planning, if you don't write your story straight away, it might not be so clear to you when you come back. So the first thing we are going to do is put all that detail down about the character description and the setting. And then we have to think about the problem. Every story has some sort of problem. In this story, Janet and Bill go missing. They go off exploring, and their families have to go and try and find them. So the issue here, the problem, is that Janet and Bill go missing. The problem in the story might be, I don't know, that there's a character that is not a very nice character, or it might be that in another story that I've read, it might be that the beach needs a big old cleanup. That will be the problem. Now, although problem is not the next word, although build up is the next word, for me, the problem is always the next easiest thing to think of. So we've got all of our character description and our setting description. We know where it's going to happen. And now we need to think about what that problem is. So in this case, Janet and Bill go missing. So that is my problem. Janet and Bill go missing. My problem is quite simple, but what comes before it and what comes after it is what will make my story great. Generally, stories do have a problem of some description. That's just how stories tend to work. But also they do normally get resolved. Most stories get resolved at the end. Not all of them, but generally that's how the author would choose to end them. But so if my problem is Janet and Bill going missing, then somewhere before that, something has to happen. So that something could be anything. It could be that somebody upsets them, and so they choose to go off. It could be that they get bored, and so they choose to go off, which in this case is actually what did happen. But the build up to the problem can be absolutely anything. So if the problem is that the ball breaks the glass in the greenhouse, then, or it breaks a window or whatever, then because the children were playing football, then the build up before would be the children playing football and maybe being warned about not kicking it too hard, and then something happens and then you've got your problem. So I always find it much easier to start with that problem, which is the really simple bit, and then move back to the build up. So in this case, the build up is that Janet and Bill got bored. They didn't like doing the same thing every day. Their families didn't like each other, made it tricky for them to be friends. So all of those things would go into my build up bit. And then my solution to my problem, well, in this case, my solution is that the families go looking for Janet and Bill, and but they can't find them. So the families go looking on lots of different planets, but they can't find them. And while they're away, they become friends. So you could draw it, you could write it. It's completely up to you. And then the ending for that is that they find Janet and Bill and the baby, and then they love playing with the purple baby. So they find them and the baby, and they love playing together. Now, you don't have to write in full sentences when you're doing a plan. At the minute, what I have on here is little notes. All of my little notes are in red because they're just my general ideas. And then I would choose a different colour and I would go in and I would come up with some adjectives for each of the different bits, or some key features that I really wanted to include in each of the different sections. And if so Julia Donaldson in the actual story chose some like weird plants and things in the forests. And so if I wanted to do that, then I would draw some pictures, I would write some names and some adjectives so that I could remember to include those in the build-up section when they get bored and they go off and they explore. So I would then go in and I would add to my basic ideas with my other colours the other bits of the story that I would like to include in it. And it's probably a really good idea to go away from it and come back to it and try rereading it so that you can make sure that it still makes sense. You can try and tell it like a story, although if you're not following, a really sort of traditional tale type pattern with the language, then that might be much harder. But verbalizing what that story is and what you're going to include each step of the way will make actually sitting down and writing it far easier. From there, you'll then have to go back and edit anyway. You'll have to sort of improve things and tweak things and make things better. But it would give you a first draft, and like everything, if we can speak it, it's much easier to write it. And remember, when we're writing, we're always trying to use that author's voice. So when you're doing your planning, you want to be trying to use the best adjectives and adverbs that you can in there, and you want to be really using your imagination so that you create the best story possible, and it's really engaging for somebody to read. So that's basically all we need to cover for today. You need your character description and setting, and then build up, problem, solution. Remember, start with the problem first and then think about how they got there and how they can get out of there. And then an ending for a story is always nice. It's always nicer to have some sort of like resolution at the end after the problem has been solved. And the most important thing to remember about a story plan is that it's yours, nobody else's, just yours. So have a go, have a play around, plan different stories, use that kind of structure, and you'll get a decent story out of it. Yeah, have a go and a play around. Whatever you do the rest of your day, have a great one. Bye-bye. Hi. So today we're going to do some measuring, and we're going to look at millilitres and litres. So we use millilitres and litres to measure the volume, the capacity of generally liquids. So if we think about the Smeds and the Smoos, they would measure their pink milk in millilitres and litres. They would measure the lake, the Lubular Lake, in millilitres and litres. So anything that is liquid, they would measure in millilitres and litres. That's kind of what it's used for. So on this slide here, you can see that there are various different jugs. So these are all measuring jugs that we can use for measuring capacity for millilitres and litres. And each one has a set of lines drawn on the side of it. Now, generally, when we come to using measuring jugs, they also have numbers on, and those numbers are our scale. So they tell us how many millilitres or litres we have. And we have to be sure to read that scale carefully, because that scale will be different on any different given jugs. We have to make sure that we read that carefully so that we know how many millilitres or litres it is that we're looking for. Millilitres are small and litres are big. So if we look at our picture here, some of these things we would measure in millilitres and some of these things we would measure in litres. Now, if we were trying to get it super duper accurate, then we might well have to measure using both. There might be more than a litre but less than 2 litres, or same sort of thing. But as an estimate, let's have a look at whether or not we would measure these things in millilitres, which are small, or litres, which are big. So there are lots of things here. We've got a cup, we've got a giant water jug, we've got a teapot and a china cup, we've got jam, we've got a lake, a bath, a plant pot, a bottle, and a pool. Now, in actual fact, the plant pot might be very difficult to measure the capacity of. Why? Yeah, because it will have holes in the bottom. But we do sometimes talk about capacity when we're talking about plant pots, because we talk about the capacity of the amount of soil that we can fit in there as well. So soil is often measured in litres as well. It's just not quite as easy to move around as water. Right then, which ones would we measure? What would we measure the coffee cup in? Would we measure that in litres? Do we drink coffee by the litre? Or do we normally, is it millilitres? Well done, it's smaller than that, it's millilitres. What about that giant water tub? Yeah, I reckon you're right. I think that has a few litres in it. I think we would use litres to measure that, but it's probably one of the smaller things that we would use to measure with litres. A teapot, yeah, millilitres. And a cup, definitely millilitres. And now I guess the important thing to remember about millilitres is that there are 1,000 millilitres in a litre. So that's a lot. Now, millilitres are only little, but if you need 1,000 of them to fill something, that's quite a lot, isn't it? What about that jar of jam? Would we measure that using millilitres or litres? Yeah, exactly. We would use millilitres to measure that. It's definitely not 1,000 of anything in there. What about a lake? Maybe the Lubular Lake in the story, the Smeds and the Smoos. Definitely litres, yeah, absolutely. It's a big thing, isn't it? What about the bath? Same thing, it's a big thing. Litres, yeah, well done, spot on. What about the plant pot? Right, it would depend on the size of the plant pot. You can get really small plant pots, which would definitely only be millilitres, but then you can get huge plant pots for things like trees, and they would definitely hold some litres, wouldn't they? So it depends on the size of the plant pot. You're very smart, well done. What about a bottle? Yeah, millilitres. Yeah, maybe if it's a slightly bigger bottle, it might hold a couple of litres, but that size bottle, a small bottle, like a drinking bottle, would definitely be millilitres, wouldn't it? And what about that pool? Millilitres or litres? Yeah, definitely litres. There's a lot of water in a pool. Okay, let's have a little look then. So we were talking about reading a scale. So in order to look at the capacity of something, we need to be able to read a scale. So here there are 3 containers. They all have the same scale, just to help keep things a little bit easy. They all have the same scale. But they all have a different amount of liquid inside them. Can you tell which one has the most? Yeah, the first one. Which one has the least? The last one. So when we come to writing our answers as to how much is there, we will know that the first one will have the biggest number and the smallest number will be for the last one. Okay, how much can you see is in that first one? We don't need to worry too much about the scale because it goes up to a line that is labelled. So that's where we're reading to. We're just reading to that line that is labelled. There's a litre in there. There's 1 litre in there. Remember, 1 litre is 1,000 millilitres. So we wouldn't write 1,000 millilitres, we would write 1 litre. But it's important to remember that because it would look smaller if we wrote them down. Oh, the next one is up to a measure line as well. Well done, 500 millilitres. That's 500 millilitres. And now we need to work out what the scale is because the next one is not. So the first line that is marked says 500. How many lines are before it? Well done, there are 4. So how much do you think each one of those lines is worth then? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Well done, that was really tricky. Each one of those lines is worth 100. And we can tell that because 500 is marked. So it will be 100, 200, 300, 400, 500. It wouldn't make any sense for it to be anything other than that, would it? And the same above it as well. We've got 500 and then 600, 700, 800, 900 and then 1 litre because it's 1,000 millilitres. Well done, yeah, absolutely. So let's have a little look at it then. Now we know that the scale on the side is hundreds. Let's have a little look at it. How much is in there? Oh, it's in between some lines. So let's look at which line it's gone past. And then we can do the adding the last bit on. Right, so it's gone past the 3rd line. So we know there are 300 millilitres in there. And then it's halfway between that and the next one. What's halfway between 300 and 400? 350, well done. So there are 350 millilitres in there. Now, if we're doing a direct comparison, because it is complicated, if we write it like this, so if I write them down, look, as the jugs appear, this is how we would write it. We would have 1 litre, 500 millilitres and 350 millilitres. This looks smaller, but it isn't because what we have to remember is that in actual fact, 1 litre is the same as 1,000 millilitres. So this actually means this. But we wouldn't write 1,000 millilitres where we could write 1 litre because that would just be more complicated than it needs to be. Okay, here we go. There are 3 jugs here and they all have a different scale. So I would like us to work out the scale on the side of the jugs and then I would like us to work out how much is in each one, the capacity of them, and then I would like us to work out which one has the most and which one has the least. So the first one, yeah, all of those lines are marked for you. It's a scale of 100. So each of those lines is 100 millilitres. And how much is in that one? Yeah, well done, 700 millilitres. There are 700 millilitres in the first jug. The second one does not have a scale of 100. There are not enough lines on it to have a scale of 100. Because the top one does say 1 litre. Maybe use the bottom one as a clue, because don't forget it's going from 0 to that. And then just double check using another one to see whether or not you agree that that is the scale and it goes up in that all the time. Yeah, it absolutely does. So the first one is 0 to 250. So then it's worth checking whether or not there are 250 to get from 250 to 500, which there are. So it's a scale of 250 millilitres. So technically what they've done there is you can see there are 4 lines before the litre. What they've done there is they split it into 1/4 of a litres. So there's the bottom one is 250 millilitres, which is 1/4 of a litre. And then the next one is 500 millilitres, which is 1/2 a litre. And then 750 millilitres, which is 3/4 of a litre. And then a litre at the top. So I guess if it was something that was used for not super specific measurements, so if you were baking, you would certainly need something like the one before with the 100 millilitre lines, or maybe something with even smaller increments in. The big one wouldn't be super useful for baking unless you were baking on a really big scale. How much is in that middle one? Yeah, well done, 750 millilitres. Which one has more in then? Yeah, the middle one has more, even though on the picture it looks like the other one does. Why is that then? Yes, no, you're absolutely right, because that has 750 and the other one only has 700. Yes, it has more in it, but why do you think? Can you see a difference in the two jugs? Yeah, the first one is tall and skinny and the other one is wider and fatter. Yeah, absolutely. So it can be a bit deceptive. Sometimes it might look like somebody else is getting a much bigger drink than you because it seems like it's bigger, but it might be taller and skinnier, and yours might be smaller and wider. Yeah, capacity is one of those things that can be really deceptive. What about that last one then? What's the scale on that last one? So the numbers that are written on it are 200, 400, 600, 800, and then 1 litre, which is 1,000, isn't it? What do you notice about that? 2, 4, 6, 8. Yeah, it's counting in twos, but it's not twos, it's 200s. Oh, okay. But there are lines in between, they're just not marked. But there's one line in between each one. So it's a scale of 100s. Oh, so the scale on that jug is the same as the scale on the first jug. They've just been labelled in a different way. Where the first jug had every single line marked with a number, this jug only has every other one marked with a number. But because they are even numbers, they're all even, and we can tell that they're all hundreds, we can tell that that bit is a scale of 200. So with the line in between, it must be a scale of 100. How much is in that jug then? It's on a line that's not marked, but we can do it because the line that is just gone past that is marked is the 400, and so it's just 100 more than that. It's 500 millilitres. Where would the 500 millilitres, where would that fill the middle jug to? Yeah, to the second one. Can you remember what we said that was? It was half a litre. Well done. So there's half a litre in the last jug. It's gone halfway from the bottom to the litre mark, not to the top of the jug, but to the litre mark. Generally, above the top of the markings, which is often a litre or half a litre, there is a bit more space. But that's so that you can actually pour it. In a measuring jug, we don't always go all the way to the top of it. So which one of those jugs has the most in then? Yeah, that middle one, the one that is wider, lower, but wider. And which one has the least in? The last one, the orange one. Well done. So we can measure in millilitres and litres. Often we'll have to measure, something will go over a litre, so it might be 1.3 litres because it's 1 litre and then 300 millilitres. So we can measure using both of them, but we just have to be really careful when we're measuring in millilitres that we read the scale appropriately on the side first. Once we've got that, we can do anything. Tricky, but you'll do it. Whatever you do the rest of your day, have a great one. Bye-bye. Hi. So today we are going to look at some common garden plants and wild plants. And when I talk about common, I mean common for the UK. So if you're not based in the UK, these might not be common for you, but they'll still be interesting to have a look at, and maybe you can have a think about what's common where you come from. Okay, so I thought we'd start by coming for a little walk just outside the allotment. So all of the stuff that's here is stuff that is wild. Nobody's grown this, but there are some really good examples of things that grow wild here in the UK. So let's start over here. So here in this field, you can see lots and lots of different sorts of grasses. So you've got sort of the very green, traditional, what you might find in the garden grass, but then in this particular area, they just let the whole lot grow wild. And so you can see that some of these grasses have their seeds at the end, and that's how it gets to be quite so wild. All of this is really quite long. The dogs love it, they can just get lost in it. But these heads that are at the very top here are how they disperse their seeds So you can see all the seeds will fall to the ground, and then that is how it becomes so wild so quickly. So for large proportions of the year, they don't cut this field at all. They leave it to grow wild, and there are different variations of grasses within that. So you've got another one here, look, you can see that this one is really fine, but that's the same thing, that's all of its seeds at the end there, and they will disperse themselves as well. And then there are fatter versions that sort of look a little bit like rushes, and that's exactly the same thing. So there are quite a lot of different variations of grass here. We can also see some dandelions. So these yellow flowers here are dandelions, and at different times of the year, so a bit later in the year, these will turn to be like a little white cloud. As a child, I remember blowing on the little white cloud and thinking it was magical and all the seeds would fly away. That's exactly what happens in the wind, and that's how that, as a seed, disperses its seeds and grows elsewhere. But these are quite common. We might find these in the garden. We might not necessarily want them, but that is indeed where they might grow. And also just here we have clover. So this is cow clover here, which is like a little flower, and then you can see the clover actually just here. These little ones are the little green ones here are clover too. So just within a tiny patch of grass, we can see quite a lot of wild grasses and flowers that are native here to the UK. And if we head just over here, in this hedgerow here, we will find some more brilliant things. So again, nobody looks after this, it is just wild, which is why it's the perfect place for me to show you. And this here is brambles. So you can see these are really spiky, which is a great way of them looking after themselves. And on these brambles that grow by themselves and protect themselves naturally, there are tons and tons of blackberries. So obviously these aren't black at the moment, they're not ripe, they're not ready, they will come into season later. And you can see here that the bush is absolutely full of them. So this whole bush all the way down is blackberries, and I just got really excited because this here is an example of what I was talking about. So this is a blackberry here, this is what they will all turn into, and they are just absolutely delicious to eat. So we don't need to grow them on the allotment, because as you can see, this wild bush here is just absolutely full of them. All those little bits that look like this, that look a bit like weird flowers, are them, and you can see that they're starting to turn pink, and then they will turn black, and then they'll be perfect for eating. I'm very excited to eat this one. I've been waiting for these to turn black for what feels like a really long time, but generally this is a much later ripening plant. But if we come further along, what you'll find is that in the hedgerow there are lots of things that look after themselves. So this here is beautiful, but it's super prickly. It's a thistle. It's purple, it's got a really lovely flower, but it is really prickly, and that is so that it can look after itself. But that is indeed a thistle. And then if we look just a little bit further behind it, all of these leaves here I'm not going to touch, because these are stinging nettles. And so these are another form of self-defense for lots of plants. They grow near them so they can protect themselves, but these are stinging nettles, and so the stinging nettles are they're a bit furry, but they feel a bit like a sting. If you touch it, it's not particularly pleasant. It makes your skin feel itchy, a bit sore. And generally where we find stinging nettles, we would find these are dock leaves. Now, people believe that if you rub a dock leaf on a stinging nettle sting, then it takes the sting out of it and it makes it feel better. I'm not sure if it does or whether it's just a distraction, but that's what they look like. And generally you will find dock leaves growing near stinging nettles. So there are a few in this hedgerow here, stinging nettles, but then all behind those wild grasses, there are lots and lots. All of these that you can see in the distance, these are all stinging nettles. Really common plant here in the UK. Back inside, let's have a little look. So these are dahlias. You can tell because of they've got quite a distinctive flower head. Those are dahlias there. We actually have more wild thistles growing over here, look, which I didn't expect to see inside, but that's quite cool. And again, we're left lots of stinging nettles. And then these are poppies. So again, really prevalent and popular in the UK. They're a beautiful wildflower, and they do actually grow if left unattended, because the little seed heads here are full of seeds and they burst, and therefore they spread their seeds and more plants will grow from that. We also have down here, these are marigolds. So again, a really distinctive flower shape actually. They're quite an easy one to remember that they're marigolds because they look so different to anything else. And then for the common garden plants, we'll come and have a look in the garden and we'll see what we can find out here. Let's start by having a look at the grass, because it's very different to that wild grass that we saw just outside the allotment. So let's have a look, and there might be some similarities. There might be some things that are growing in there that we saw over there. So this is the lawn, is the grass in the garden. This is, it is wild, but it's all that same sort of grass that we had before. And then underneath it there's like a layer of moss. Unfortunately there's quite a lot of moss in the garden grass. And then there's the cow clover and clover like we saw before. And then there's loads of these. Now these ones, these white ones flatten out and there's beautiful yellow head in the middle of them. These ones are daisies, and there are loads of daisies, look. They're only ever so tiny. They're very pretty, but they grow in the garden as well as wild as well. And if we have a look at things that we grow in the garden, we can see some common plants for the UK. So we've got this one here, which is lavender. Now at the moment it doesn't smell particularly, but at the end of the season these go really hard and you can press them together and then you can smell them, and it smells absolutely beautiful. And if you brush up against the bigger plants accidentally, then they smell really nice as well. There are a couple of other plants that smell in the garden. They're mainly herbs, but lavender is a really pretty purple flower that, yeah, it goes woody and smells beautiful. And then let's have a look. There are some marigolds there, like the ones that we saw earlier, some beautiful orange. And then this one here that you can see is really prickly and quite big is one of these. These are quite a common flower in the UK. They don't always look like this. If we were to buy them in the shops, we would see them and they would look much more like this one. They are roses. There are a few different roses. There's a beautiful red one here. This one has done most of its flowering for the year. And then if we scoot along the path, you'll see another one here that is just on its way out, but that one has yellow flowers on during the season. And then here, these ones are called fuchsias, and these ones, beautiful pink. This is what they look like when they pop and they're fully open, but they come and they're like little buds to start with, and they grow into quite a big bush with lots of them on. There's a good example just here. This is what they look like to start with. They're all little buds, and then those little buds go a little bit and then they pop right open, and they're really pretty. We can see all the different bits of the flower in there. And then down at the front down here, these are hydrangeas. These ones are red ones, but they come in all sorts of different colours. Finally, in here, these are viola. They're like a teeny tiny version of a flower called a pansy, and again they come in all sorts of different colours. My favourite ones are like these that are yellow and purple. And then there are a few flowers that I can't show you in the garden because they are not in flower at the moment, or we don't have any, for various different reasons. So let's have a look at another couple of common plants, flowers in particular, in the UK. So if we start with this one here, these are lilies. Now, they're all lilies. There are 3 different variations of lilies here. And you can see in the middle of the lily, there are what look like teeny tiny caterpillars, little furry bits. Those bits are where the pollen comes from. It's where the pollen collects. And in actual fact, if you have a cat, then you have to be super careful with lilies because that bit there is poisonous to them. So if we have them inside the house, then we always cut those bits out. It's also that bit that stains our clothes if we get it on our clothes. So really pretty. We quite like cut lilies in our house. In fact, they are one of my favourite flowers. Then next, these just aren't quite in flower yet because it's not quite time, but these are sunflowers. They're called sunflowers because they look like the sun. They are beautiful shades of yellow. They grow a really thick stem because they grow really tall, and they're quite prevalent in the UK. In the middle of the sunflower, you can see there's a brown section. That section there is absolutely full of seeds. Now the birds love those seeds, but that's also the bit of the sunflower that we can use. We can harvest those seeds and then we can grow more sunflowers the following year. We also make sunflower oil from sunflowers, but they're also just really good fun to enjoy. So they tend to flower in the summertime. So not a million miles off, but we're not quite there in season just yet. And yeah, they're huge. There are other variations of them that are a little bit smaller, but my favourite ones are the ones that are really big. And then the next one that we have here these are buttercups. Now these often grow in the grass, like the daisies and the clover. These often grow in the grass, and they are a really bright, vibrant yellow. Again, really, really pretty little flowers. These are tiny little flowers. They're about the same size as a daisy, so maybe the same size as your nail or your on your finger or your thumb. Maybe a little bit bigger, but not very big at all. And yeah, these are a really pretty common flower, but generally found in grasses, short grasses as opposed to those long wild grasses that we saw earlier in the video. And then we have these ones. These ones are called tulips. Now, tulips grow from bulbs. The bulbs sometimes stay under the ground throughout the off season, and then they come back during the spring. So the reason that I can't show you these is because they are a spring flowering flower. They don't particularly like the really warm sunshine, but they're quite a closed flower, like a little cup. And as you can see from the picture, they come in all sorts of colours. These are really, really pretty. They have very delicate petals on them. And generally this is how they are enjoyed, where they've only just opened and they're like a closed little cup of colour. They're really pretty. And then another one that grows from bulbs that's common here in the UK is daffodil. These yellow ones here are daffodils, as you can see in the picture. There are 3 different versions of that, just different colours. And there are also another variation of a daffodil that is tiny, like those tiny viola, those little tiny pansies that we saw earlier in the video. There's a tiny version of a daffodil as well. Now, a daffodil is another flower that tends to be quite an early flower. It's a spring flower. They're great early signs of spring. They're a really good indicator of that.
and they just bring a little pop of sunshine, little pop of colour into the garden after the winter, where actually here in the UK there aren't too many colourful flowers. Most of them die off towards the end of the summer, autumn season, and then it's not until the spring that we get those beautiful colours back again.
Wow, what a lot of learning about flowers that are native to the UK where I live. Now, you might not live in the UK, you might not even live in Europe. You might know some of these flowers, but maybe the flowers that are native to your country or where you live are different. Why don't you take a little walk, have a look, see what you can find, and then maybe ask a grown-up what they're called, or maybe you could do your own research into that. Whatever you do with the rest of your day, have a great one. Bye-bye.
Hello Angel students, today we are going to discuss empowerment versus disempowerment. So let's begin with a definition of what empowerment is. Empowerment is the process of becoming stronger and more confident, especially in controlling one's life, one's behaviour, one's rights. Okay? And this is another one where I'm going to ask you some self-reflecting questions. So if you can get your pen and notepads out again, that would be wonderful. So as we go through the questions, you can write them down, and then in some quiet time, have a look at the questions and take the time out to answer them honestly. We're speaking about empowerment versus disempowerment. So I've just given you the definition there. So in regards to disempowerment, of course, it would be the opposite of that, when you're not necessarily feeling strong and confident, or as if you have control over one's rights, behaviours or life. Now, in our last lesson, we spoke about influences, and this really does tie into influence, because when we are not being our most authentic and genuine selves, or we are allowing ourselves to be influenced by others so that we fit in, so that we are liked, so that we are approved of, we're giving away our power. Over time, that will slowly make anyone feel disempowered, because it's as if you're showing up as a character, not really your true self. You're showing up as a character to be accepted by other people, but they don't have the opportunity to know you and get to know you. And so slowly that disempowers you. But as you learn to show up as you and be proud of yourself and your gifts and your talents and who you are and what you can offer and what you truly stand for, you will build up that level of self-empowerment. And you will get that from other people too, because they will want the best for you. They will want to build you up. They will be happy to do so because of how you make them feel. And in turn, they will want to make you feel good as well. So we're going to go through some questions first. I'm not going to ask you to write them down. Of course, as always, they'll be on the screen as well. So you should have enough time to write them down from there too. And then I'm going to go into tips of how to always go back to an empowered state. Even if you have found yourself not feeling very empowered, these tips will help guide you back to being on the path of empowering yourself once more. So the first question is, how much attention do you give to current trends? Do you always know what's trending? Do you always know what's trendy? How much attention do you give to current trends? As in, what's a trending topic or look or activity? Okay. The next question is, do you keep up with celebrities and people that you don't actually know? And how much time would you say that you give to that? So, you know, if you're somebody that scrolls or you're online a lot, how much time do you give to that element of keeping up with or watching celebrities, and specifically people that you don't necessarily personally know? The next question, do you ever find yourself lost in thought about what people think of you? As in, what you wear, the things you talk about. Do you think that, do people actually care what I'm saying? Are they listening to what I'm saying? You know, do you ever just find yourself lost in thought about what people think of me? Do they like me? Do they not like me? Did I say something I shouldn't have said? Do you ever have these thoughts going around in your head? Do you ever get lost in thought about what you think about yourself? How you look, what you wear, how you talk, what you do? Do you get lost in thought about what you think about you? And the last question is, if you could buy absolutely anything, if you could buy absolutely anything right now, what would it be? And before you answer this question, I know you're going to go and write it down later, but even then, before you answer this question, would you want that thing because of your own reasons? Because it's something that you have clear reasons why you want to buy it? Or is it because something or someone else has influenced you to want that thing? Have a good and deep think about that one before you answer it, okay? So those are today's questions that I want you to consider. It's important to remember that we can be influenced by so many different things. We can be influenced by the weather. You know, sometimes people get really grumpy if it's raining or it's cold and windy, and then they're really happy if it's nice and hot and sunny. Not always, because then you get those people that are influenced by it being too hot. Oh, it's just too hot, I can't do anything. You know, how can it ever be too hot? Anyway. Maybe I'm a bit biased because I love the sunshine personally, but there is a saying that we cannot be influenced by the weather. You know, don't let the weather change your mood, or however the saying goes. Be aware of how things make you feel when you're being influenced in any one moment. Does it make you feel empowered? Does it make you feel better, stronger, more sure, more clear? Or does it make you question yourself? Does it make you think about maybe things that you don't have, maybe character traits and ways of being that you don't possess, because that's simply not who you are, and you don't have to be like everyone else. Sometimes when you look at current trends that are fashionable, everyone looks the same. Why would we all want to look the same? Why would you want to be the same? We are all very unique in our own ways, and there is nothing wrong with that. It is extremely easy to feel empowered when things are going our way, when we have a strong team of people around us, friends, family, whatever the case may be, and they're telling us all the things that we want to hear, and they're giving us all the encouragement we could ever possibly soak up. That's amazing. That's beautiful. That's wonderful to have such support. There are at times going to be moments when you need to be able to give those empowering talks and moments of support to yourself. There are lots of different ways that you can maintain being in a state of empowerment, being able to empower yourself, being able to remind yourself of your greatness, to encourage yourself, to cheer for yourself, to clap for yourself. There are many different ways. One of the ways I want to discuss right now is to follow the good feelings. Whenever we are in certain situations, or even if someone asks the question, you automatically know whether it's a or a you do. There just may be other factors that make you change your mind so that you don't seem different. There just may be other factors that make you change your mind because you haven't listened to yourself, your heart, your own intuition. You're allowing outside external things to move you internally. Let's try a little exercise, okay, shall we, angel students? You are going to respond. I don't want you to say anything. I don't want you to say yes, no, give an explanation. Well, maybe, but then no. Okay, you're simply on the inside, in your own mind, you're going to be like just, and that's the sound your body makes inside. That's what I am comparing that to. And I'm not, please don't, when people ask you questions, speak, answer them properly. We don't want you speak. But in this context, it's just how your body is reacting. So I just want you to do it all internally as you get more and more used to trusting your internal guidance system. What will guide you along the path of life and usually never guide you wrong if you listen to your internal guidance system. So let's try this exercise now. We're going to have some very, very simple questions. It's not going to be anything hard. Don't worry about it. There's also no right or wrong. This is not a quiz. It's not a test. It is just for you to get used to what really goes on in there and how can I hear it more. All right, so what we're going to do, remember when I ask you a question, or yeah? All right, let's begin. Did you sleep well last night? Did you have breakfast today? Did you enjoy what you had for breakfast today? If you could have had something else for breakfast today, would you have chosen something else? Do you enjoy the thoughts that you have? Is there anything that you need to do today that you've been putting off? The last good deed that you did for someone else, did it make you feel good? Have you made someone else smile today? Have you said your affirmations today? Did you brush your teeth before bed last night? Do you feel empowered? Do you like when loved ones tell you how much you mean to them? Do you enjoy being out in nature? Do you like the rain? Do you enjoy feeling the sun shining on your skin? Can you swim? Are you good at sports? Has your communication been clear and kind and considerate lately? Are you good at listening? Do you feel others listen to you? Okay, that's it. That's the end of the question. They're just very random questions, but the key is for you to get that first instinct, that gut. What did your gut say? And get more and more used to that because it's internal. It's not something that's necessarily going to come out. It's an internal yes, no, I don't think so, So get used to hearing that, get used to feeling that. Even if you don't hear it, there's a signal that goes off in your body. There's a signal if you can go back to that or even rewind it. You can even ask yourself questions, come up with your own questions, write a list of questions down. And if you find it easier, maybe ask somebody else to ask the questions and you can just sit there, relax and answer the questions and get familiar with how your body responds, whether it's a or a so that you know how to identify with what really makes you feel empowered, what makes you feel like, yeah, this is exactly what I'm supposed to be doing. When we follow the good feelings, that's usually when we're on the right path. Sometimes we even have thoughts that are disempowering. They're unhelpful thoughts. And on this channel before, we've spoken about the brain and its job. So I would like you to practice when any of those disempowering thoughts come in. Again, you're going to get a feeling within because you know that's not a nice thought. That's not true. That's not true at all. So there are two things you can try. Again, you will know which one feels empowering for you. So when a thought comes up that you don't particularly find very helpful or useful, you can either say stop or cancel and then replace it with another thought. I always find it very helpful to have a specific go-to thought. Remember the anchor that you can use to immediately reprogram the empowering thoughts. So if a thought comes up, you just shout stop or cancel. Now I'm going to ask you a question. When that happens, I want you to respond or When a thought comes up, which one sounds more comforting for you? Is it stop? Is it cancel? Okay, So now you've got the word that you're going to use, and you need to come up with your anchor, your sentence to replace that thought. And eventually your brain will stop sending that up to the surface and you won't have that issue anymore. And you can continue with your empowering thoughts. So for homework angel students, please write about a time when listening to your inner guidance and your gut instincts, when that really showed up powerfully for you, when it showed up strong and empowered you, so that you can go back to this story and use it as a way to powerfully impact your experiences. And have fun with it, embellish the story, make it into a whole scene and have characters and everything, all right? So that you can really look back on it and it shows you just how well you did in that situation solely by listening to yourself, so that you learn to trust yourself and build connections of trust within yourself and your gut to know that you always have the answers. You always know exactly what to do, because you do. You've just got to listen. Enjoy, and I'll see you next time. Goodbye, angel students.
Hi everyone, here's a video for Angel School. Follow me, let's do quick exercise for the joints. 1 foot wide, warm up your wrists and ankles. Change. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Okay, knees. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Relax your hips. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Change. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Keep your elbow up. Hands reach out far as you can. 1. Open up your lung. 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. One hand high as you can, one hand low. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. For the elbow back. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. Arms straight. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. Change. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 9, 10. Shoulders down, head up, neck. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. Shoulders. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Change. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Relax your back. 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 10. Run. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 8, 9, 10. Shoulders. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. Okay, let's do quick stretch, then we'll practice some forms. First comfort stance, marble stretch. Bend your knees. Breathe in, look forward. Breathe out to your body. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. Good. So we did a little bit quicker. If you do with your breathing, it should be take for a few more minutes, yeah? Second Kung Fu stance, Kung Fu stretch, one leg bend, one leg straight. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. Good. Change. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. Good. So last time we finished the punch, yeah? You punch one, both sides. So this time we're gonna continue from here. So for example, so if we punch to the left, then turn your body to the right. Right hand block and clench your fist. Left leg forward and punch your left hand. Then turn right and right leg stamp. Now right elbow, right knee, left elbow, left knee, then marble, one fist above your left fist above your left knee, right fist above your head, and bend your knees, then stop, inhale, and exhale. Let's just finish the routine and do a few more times. Start from here, both hand punch, combo, front leg bend, back leg straight. From here, turn your body to the right, right hand block, left hands on your waist, and left leg forward, and punch your left hands. And turn your body to the left. Then right leg, stand. Now here, right fist, and the right leg stand. Hands together. Then right hand block, right knee, left hand block, left knee. Then left hands above your left knee, right hand above your head, and look left. And if you feel comfortable, you can bend your knees so you can put the bottle of water on your leg, not falling down. That's good. From here, clench your fist, elbow back. Like in the beginning, clench your fist, elbow back. When you finish, clench your fist, elbow back. And inhale, hands up. And exhale, shoulders, elbow, hands pushing down. Okay, one more time. Left leg in the front. Turn your body to the right. 1. Same time, right hand block. Right hand clench your fist. Left leg forward. And turn your body to the right. Turn your body to the left. Turn your body to the left. Right knee up. Right leg stand. leg stand, then right hand block, left hand block, and left hand above your left knee, right hand above your head, and stop. Clench your face, elbow strike, inhale, and exhale. And let's practice 5 more times. So, left leg in the front, right leg straight. Turn your body to the right, breathing in, clench your face, left leg forward, turn your body to the right, then punch your left hand to turn your body to the left, right leg stand, yeah, right fist, right leg stand, block, right elbow, left elbow, and keep your left face above your left knee, and right face above your head, and breathing up. Then clench your face, elbow strike, breathing in, breathing out, then stop, inhale, and exhale. Okay, let's do a few more times. So from here, left leg bent, right leg straight. Both hand punch, turn right, right hand block, breathing in, left leg forward, and punch your left hand, turn left, then right knee up, left knee up, then stop. Clench your face, breathing in, elbow back, breathing out. Then inhale, hands up, and exhale. Drop your shoulders, elbow, hands pushing down to maximum. Okay. Follow me one more time. Both hand punch. Left leg in front. Turn your body to the right. Breathing in, clench your face. Left leg forward. Left hand punch. 2, right knee out. Right hand, right fist. 1, 2, and 3, 4, 5. Inhale, hands up, and exhale. Okay, let's try one more time. That's 3 more times. Then we're finished. This time slightly a little bit power, yeah? So left leg bend, right leg straight. Both hand punch. And turn right. Yeah. From here, turn right. Left leg forward. Punch your left hand. Turn left. Then. Yeah. So right leg stand. And 1, 2, and stop. Inhale and exhale. 2 more times. From here, turn right. Left leg forward. And left. Stand. Block. 1, 2. Clench your face. Elbow back. Breathing in, hands up. And breathing out. Last one. your body to the right. 1, 2, 3. 1, 2. Inhale, hands down. And exhale. You can practice a little bit by yourself. Next time we'll do the whole routine together. It's the last 3 breathing exercises together. 2 foot wide. Keep your foot point straight. Foot down, head up. Take your hands, breathing in through your nose. Hands down, breathing out through your nose. Two more times. Breathing in. And breathing out. Last one. Okay. Let's finish it here today.
Please like and subscribe so you can get more and more lessons.